Hello, I'm Hayden Turner. I normally sit on this side of the camera presenting wildlife documentaries, but tonight I'm here to introduce a story about my dear friend, Justine Damond Ruszczyk. In July this year, just weeks before her wedding, Justine was shot dead by a Minneapolis police officer after she called 911 to report a possible assault. Her death unleashed a storm of community protests about excessive police force and raised questions which are still to be answered. Tonight, for the first time, we hear from Justine's family, friends, and the lawyer fighting for justice.
5:30, shots fired. Can we get EMS code 3 Washburn and 51st Street? We got one down.
Copy.
5:30, I'm starting to go.
Code 530, are you code 4 for medical?
5:30, code 4 for medical. 520, where is EMS on this?
EMS is coming, rescue is coming.
That night, I told Justine to call 911. I had this conception that when she said the police are here, that I felt all's well, like the knights in shining armor have arrived. And I'll never feel that again.
It doesn't add up. That's the problem for us. It doesn't add up. Why a policeman would shoot a woman in her pajamas.
This is a shocking killing. It is inexplicable.
The lack of video evidence is making it harder to piece together exactly what happened.
We want justice, so we need the truth to come out. We want to know the reason why she was shot. Why is she dead?
Not just who pulled the trigger, but why.
Justine Damond is the 5th person to be fatally shot by police in Minnesota this year.
Her death did turn everything on its head, you know. Started to question, what are these officers thinking?
We had not experienced the police violence on a personal level before. It's a different narrative. And suddenly people see this differently. They see, oh, this could be me.
There's no excuse for it. If she can be shot, any 911 caller, any mother in her pajamas, anybody can be shot.
I'm drinking coffee. I feel great. Feel excited.
She was very comfortable in America, and she was so happy with Don. We've often commented on the culture of violence in America, but we really didn't ever think it would touch us.
There's a number of things that had to line up for this to happen in the way it did. I was away. I was out of town on a business trip on a Saturday.
Everybody was just gone, which is weird, you know? My dad only goes to Vegas like a couple times a year, and I'm usually at home, and one of the neighbors are home, but yeah, everybody was gone.
The wedding was to be in August. I'd spoken to her in the morning and she had been talking about the bridesmaids' dresses arriving and how excited she was about that. She was burning the candle at both ends for sure, so she was getting very little sleep and very, very excited about everything that was coming. And she had been writing a lot and she was really excited about her completion of some of the work that she'd been doing.
She had a course that she was teaching, and meditation was a big part of that. She was a natural teacher. It was her passion, it was her purpose, it was her dharma. Justine and I met at a meditation retreat in Colorado Springs. The connection that I felt was beyond anything I've ever experienced.
My dad said that he kind of like followed her around like a little dog, and she went skydiving. He watched her fall out of the plane and just sat and said, that's the girl that I'm gonna marry.
So I came home and I told all my friends and my family that I just met my future wife. And they said, great, when can we meet her? I said, well, she lives 9,000 miles away.
To suddenly start to imagine that there was the love of her life in another country, miles away, was a little unsettling for her. But yet, it wouldn't go away. She was becoming more and more enamoured with this man who she connected on every level with.
I didn't know that this had progressed past, just a casual conversation until the day she called me up and she said, Dad, I found the guy I love, and I'm probably going to America. Whoops. I didn't want to lose her, and I believe that Australia is a great place to live. And so I was hoping that she'd bring him back here.
Let's see how long you can hold it.
Juzzy and I grew up on northern beaches in Sydney.
1, 2, 3.
No! You made me. Okay, I'll try again.
Mum's Australian. She studied nursing in Sydney. My dad's American. After he finished his studies, he started travelling and met Mum overseas. They got married.
This is my daddy.
I was beginning to question some of the things that were happening in America. I mean, there was lots of conflict in the streets. Demonstrations at universities around the country where there were violence, there were riots. Things were disruptive.
There was a lot of discrimination against different cultures, which he felt was wrong.
I was looking for a different kind of social environment, and Australia appealed to me. Justine, as a child, was just one of those wonderful little girls. Very verbal and very determined. Straight A's all the time, without much effort.
Jason, move out of the way.
So you back up, Justine. And then...
No, I'm trying to film the feet. G'day! G'day!
There were always animals involved in Justine's life. Margaret was a member of Wires, and our backyard was full of possums and birds. If that influenced Justine to become a vet, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Our first year of vet school was wonderful and exciting. But as we went into our second year, Justine's mum, Margaret, was ailing from cancer.
Margaret became very seriously ill, and Justine was doing exams at that time. Margaret wanted her to stay at school.
So I took some time off work and looked after Mum at home. And then she had to get moved to a hospital, and then she ultimately passed away.
She graduated with honors. She was doing locum work in the UK for about a year. And at that time, something changed in her life.
We had many conversations because she couldn't understand how I was loving it so much, and she wasn't. There's an amount of resilience that you need to be able to do the job that we do. And whether she wanted to learn it or not, she definitely didn't for some reason.
Oop, here we go.
She sort of put veterinary science on the back burner then. And she was really going through some tough times. And we talked about what we'd been through with Mum and how she was really still struggling with the grief and the loss.
She wanted to save everyone from pain and hurt. She wanted to save animals. She wanted to save people. I think she probably wanted to save her mother. That's one of the things that was deeply passionate about her. She went to an ashram in India. She wanted to understand a lot more spirituality where she could help people and help herself and heal herself.
She was an academic at heart. She had an amazing inquisitive brain.
She became interested in how much control the mind could have on the body's health. Could you slow down the progress of an illness or something? So she became interested in studying neuroscience, brain waves and scanning, and how meditation can control the body. I never reached an end where I was totally satisfied that I understood what she was looking for, but it was certainly a lifelong quest on her part.
Once she'd settled back in Sydney, she started teaching meditation, workshops and courses. I've never seen someone so proactive in fixing themselves. Then out of the blue, she met Don. The original plan, I think, was for Don to come to Australia, but Juzzy and Don decided that they should go back to Minneapolis.
The suburb where she lived was sweet. Norman Rockwell, little houses and lawns and people with signs up saying, all welcome in this house.
When she found herself in Minneapolis, she described it as this beautiful community of like-minded people that she'd suddenly landed in.
We got close very quickly, and she felt like another mom to me. It was just two guys living here together, and then she literally came in and just made it a home, and little Juzzy things showed up everywhere, like gnomes and fairies and stuffed animals and her art or pieces of Australia.
From Niagara Falls, reporting live. I'm letting you know it's cold.
When she got here in December, I gave her a gift, and her gift was a fleece, wool socks, a hat, and gloves. Because it was December, you know? It was a matter of months before she was doing her work, teaching. She went to Lake Harriet Spiritual Community and quickly found a home there, found a place for her voice to be heard.
So I'm originally trained as a veterinary surgeon and now working to teach people about themselves from the level of quantum physics, from the level of neuroscience, so that you can learn about how your brain works and how you can use it to create the state of health that you want and the life that you want.
You know, you have to have the ability to walk in that world of science and spirituality, but she bridged those so beautifully and then delivered it in a way that wasn't overly technical. And when she'd bring humor in, it lightened it all up.
So this is the last opportunity. The door's still kind of open a crack, but I'm going to get them to lock it. So once you find out, you can't go back. And I also
She was a strong woman. It took a while to get there, but she was there, and that's why she was so, I guess, powerful.
They were due to get married in Hawaii. The last conversation that we had with her was, we were in the car and she wanted to formally ask the kids to be page boy and flower girl.
What I'd like you to do when I come out?
That's when she told them the story about saving the ducks out of the drain.
I've got them in my skirt.
Yep. What would you like?
And I'm just going to go with the mum either up here or straight to the lake. Come on, come on, come on.
For me and for Jason, it was almost like, oh yeah, another story about Juzzy saving an animal out of a tree or out of a drain or something.
You might just need to chill a bit.
Okay.
You guys okay with them?
Yeah, thanks for doing that.
And I feel so silly now having felt that, because it's so significant in retrospect, but and so symbolic in a lot of ways.
Oh my God.
That's beautiful.
That was beautiful.
So Justine obviously had many things to do before the wedding. And we were in contact, a few times a day over that period to when the night of the 15th occurred. Don was away on work, so Justine was home alone.
Justine was convinced that she heard someone in extreme distress in the back laneway, and so much so that she'd called Don.
She'd heard someone that she thought was being raped.
It was the hottest night of the year, so everybody's windows were closed and air conditioning was on, so they wouldn't have heard. And I'm not sure how she did, but she heard something with the air conditioning on.
It didn't stop, so she called him again and he said, call 911.
She did what any Aussie woman would do. Go to the police because you know it's safe and they're going to get to the answer of it. In this case, it was the wrong decision.
We gather that she still heard this noise and she called 911 a second time to say it's been 8 minutes or something and there's still no one here.
They were rookie cops. We know they didn't have their dash camera on. They didn't have their body cameras on.
For some reason, she went out into the laneway behind her house. The house fronts onto a street and the garages are in the back. It's a laneway with street lights on it, motion sensors on all the garages. Now, I can only suppose that she came out of the house and realizing that the police car had gone past the site of the incident, that she walked up to the police car. For some unknown reason, a man shot her and killed her.
She was at the peak of her wave that she'd worked so hard to get to. None of it made sense. Absolutely none of it made sense.
It's such a paradox in the way that she died. She lived her life as a peaceful person, inspiring others. She helped people transform their lives. She transformed her own life.
Justine was a beacon to all of us. We only ask that the light of justice shine down on the circumstances of her death.
Sadly, her family and I have been provided with almost no additional information from law enforcement regarding what happened after police arrived.
My mom is dead. I'm so done with all this violence. It's so much. America sucks. These cops need to get trained differently. This has to stop.
I was just shocked.
This has to stop.
Yeah, total two opposites colliding at once. Just couldn't believe it, you know. Still can't some days.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
So a few days after Justine was killed, our neighborhood held a rally.
We gonna be all right.
We feel like true justice for Justine isn't one police officer being convicted. We feel like true justice for Justine is a systemic change in policing. People from the African American community, they came down and were present here on the block with us. We didn't understand this at all until this happened to Justine. I mean, I still can't relate to what the African American communities are going through and the vulnerability that they feel. People like Jason Soul helped us better understand what's going on with policing in general.
When I first heard about Justine being killed, I said, man, that's tragic, and I automatically sent people over there. In no just society should you be the one calling police for help and end up dead. So here, we have a long-standing problem, and it's time for us to fix it.
The police shooting of Australian Justine Damond has caused political upheaval in the city of Minneapolis.
The officer who pulled the trigger is Mohamed Noor.
Noor has refused to give evidence to investigators, and today officials admitted that they can't force him to break his silence.
The shooter has decided to plead the Fifth Amendment, which means he's not being interviewed by the police and he can't be compelled in court. If it goes to court, he can't be compelled to speak either.
There was tremendous pressure on the mayor and the police chief for accountability, for the officer involved to be charged. It ultimately led to the ouster of the police chief.
And I asked Chief Harteau for her resignation. She tendered it, and I have accepted it.
We do not want you as the mayor ever again.
Your
police department has terrorized us enough.
Activists actually went into the city hall where the mayor was speaking and took over the meeting.
We want you to take your staff with you because they've terrorized us enough.
Eventually, they succeeded in shutting down the press conference, and protesters celebrated their victory.
About 2 weeks after Juzzy passed away, we all flew over to Minneapolis. I really wanted to see the life that she was living there and the people that she had met. I learned how loved she was in that neighborhood.
We spent a lot of time walking up and down that laneway, trying to visualize what happened. The information that we get from the media is that maybe there was someone slapping the back of a car. Even if that's true, it's not, in my mind, enough to be a startling factor where there's no other criminal activity going on. It was apparent to us that there's very bright lighting. Even the spot where she died, it's directly under a spotlight.
There's also motion detectors on several of the garages. It's hard to understand how she wouldn't have been well eliminated.
We realized that there was a possibility that we'd be unhappy with the way the police force investigated. Somebody took my daughter's life for no reason. And I think that's a crime. And I'd like to see him in court.
We're waiting to hear from the state prosecutor about whether he will make the determination of whether to lay charges on Noor.
If they decide not to charge him, then the civil case that we want to bring will start earlier. My family came up with Bob Bennett. He fights police malfeasance and violence, and he likes to fight those public cases.
We're in the middle of what I would call the answer deprivation phase. The most important things are the things that are redacted, and we need to see those. Justine's case is a civil rights case, and that's always the struggle. This is a use of force that is so beyond the pale that it would cause other people to not call the police. Well, the city of Minneapolis has historically had problems with the use of excessive force. We've had more problems here with shootings because of some of the way that officers are being trained today.
Show me your hands! Lay down so we can help you!
So you got 11 guys in a tactical semicircle, 7 pistols and 4 AR-15s. There's no reason to shoot this woman. In this post-9/11 world, areas of police training, especially with trigger engagement decisions, have gotten a lot more militaristic. It's impossible to look into the mind of the person who actually engages the trigger. In Justine's case, I can't imagine they teach officers that one of the good lanes of fire is across the lap of their driving partner. You know, I mean, it's crazy.
I've spoken with police officers who are upfront and frank about the fact that they're often terrified. They are asked to walk towards trouble when everybody else is fleeing, and there's a lot of guns out there, and it's the United States. You know, everybody loves their guns. We've already had one more since Justine. We were shocked to discover that there was no reliable source of information on the officer-involved shootings that were happening. Nobody was tracking it consistently. So we built a database of all of the deaths in our state since 2000, which is when we had, consistent death certificate data. And we found that, excluding police car chases, police had killed 162 people. Most of these people were shot, and as far as we know, in recent history, no officer in our state has ever been criminally prosecuted for shooting and killing someone in the line of duty. So what's your best guess on what the charge might be in Justine's case?
From the attorneys that I've spoken to, if Freeman wants a conviction, he'd go for manslaughter, intentional discharge.
From what I understand, there's only one case in the history of the Minnesota Police Department where charges have been laid, and that was Philando Castile's case just recently.
Philando Castile and his girlfriend were driving one evening. He was pulled over by a suburban police officer named Geronimo Yanez.
He approaches the car. Philando tells him that he has a gun permit to conceal and carry, and tells him where his gun is. You have a panicky officer who begins shooting.
Stay with me. We got pulled over for a busted tail light in the back.
Told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
He was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his arm.
It seems ludicrous that somebody would be pulled over for a minor traffic infraction and wind up dead.
Yanez was charged with manslaughter, a number of charges, I think unlawful discharge. He walked out of there without being convicted of anything. We wanted a conviction for that, because if Philando couldn't get justice in that case, we don't really understand which case there will be justice.
We're hopeful, but I mean, with those odds, it's not looking great that there's going to even be charges be laid, let alone there be a conviction.
With Justine, it's uniting people. People are talking, like there's conversations. I don't know if we're gonna get the justice part though. The system is sick, so you have to convict this officer so we can help the system get better, regardless of whether he was a black man and she was a white woman. Someone has to be convicted so a new standard is set.
This event has changed my world. It's stolen, 40 years of my daughter's life. That's a very big crime, as I see it. She would have wanted us to go to the end of seeing some change. And her death is just not something that just can be washed away.
There has to be accountability for why somebody would do that and ultimately take the life of somebody else. I think that Justine, who she was, the people she impacted and continues to impact, the story that is being told about what happened here and the way the community has risen up, it's all around love. There's going to be justice at some level. But there also is going to be evolution at a spiritual level. That's what Justine would want, and that's who she was.